1 year after divorcing his wife without leaving her a single thing, Aiden was walking home on a quiet weekend afternoon when he caught sight of someone he never expected to see again. Inside a busy storefront packed with customers, a woman stood at the center of the shop, calmly directing employees as they prepared orders for shipment. It was Gisela, his ex-wife. Aiden couldn't believe what he was seeing. He rubbed his eyes again and again, wondering if he had mistaken her for someone else. But the more he looked, the clearer her face became. There was no mistake. It really was the woman he had once lived with for years. Inside the store, employees hurried to pack box after box. The shelves were filled with household goods, almost overflowing with inventory. On a long table in the middle of the room, a phone was still live streaming, and the constant notification chimes announced one new order after another. Outside, 2 delivery drivers had just finished loading cartons into a van while another driver walked in to pick up the next shipment. The entire store buzzed with activity, so busy that no one noticed the man standing silently outside the glass door. Aiden slowly stepped backward, making sure Gisela wouldn't see him. One thought echoed over and over in his mind. How could she be doing so well without me? His memory drifted back to the last words he had thrown at her before they divorced. You really think you'll survive after this? Without me, you'll never amount to anything. Back then, Gisela hadn't cried. She hadn't argued. She had simply turned around and walked away without looking back even once. That afternoon, the blazing sun hung over Yuma, Arizona, where Gisela and Aiden lived. The heat had lingered all day, leaving the air dry and heavy. Inside their small suburban home, Gisela was making a pot of chicken noodle soup for Ari when she heard the sound of Aiden's SUV pulling into the driveway. She turned off the stove, brushed a few loose strands of hair away from her face, and went to open the front door. Aiden walked in with a dark look on his face, as if something had gone wrong at work. He tossed his keys onto the entry table without even looking at her. Did you even look in the mirror today? Your hair's a mess. I bust my back working all day. Then I come home, and this is what I have to look at. Gisela raised her eyes, keeping her voice calm. Did something happen at work today? Sit down. I'll get you a glass of water. Yeah, something happened. I'm sick of you. My coworkers take their wives out, and they're proud to be seen with them. I keep you inside this house like something I'm ashamed of. You need to find a job. Don't expect me to support you forever. If I go to work, who's going to take care of Ari? Or would you stay home with her for a while so I can work? Do you even hear yourself? A man staying home with a kid all day? You want people laughing at me? So you won't take care of your daughter, and you don't want to support your wife. Then what am I supposed to think? Aiden let out a short scoff and looked at her with open contempt. Women out there are raising 3 or 4 kids and still making good money selling on TikTok Shop. You stay home while your husband pays for everything. Every time I look at you, you seem miserable. Did you forget Ari had her tonsils removed earlier this year? She's been in and out of the hospital almost every month. I don't want to stay home. But with her getting sick like this, how can I leave her? Stop using her as an excuse. She gets sick because of your side of the family. Nobody in mine has problems like that. Aiden threw his jacket onto a chair, turned around, and walked back out. A moment later, the SUV pulled away. Gisela stood in the kitchen as tears fell into the pot of soup without her noticing. Gisela stood in the kitchen for a long time. She didn't even notice the tears falling into the pot of soup. The man she had married no longer cared about her or their daughter. As far as he was concerned, only he mattered. She walked into Ari's bedroom and rested a hand on her forehead. Ari had a fever again. Her skin was burning, and her lips had gone dry. Gisela quickly helped her into a light jacket, wrapped a small blanket around her, and booked a lift to Yuma Regional Medical Center. By the time they arrived, it was after 8 p.m. Gisela sat in the hallway with Ari in her arms and her phone in her hand. She called Aiden. The phone rang 5 or 6 times before going to voicemail. She sent him a text telling him Ari had a high fever and was in the hospital. A little later, the message showed as read. He never called back. He never sent a reply. The next morning, after Ari had finished an IV, Gisela's phone finally rang. She looked at Aiden's name on the screen, took a breath, and answered. How's Ari? Is she at Yuma Regional? You read my message last night. Why are you calling now? I was busy. It's just a fever. You always make everything sound worse than it is. Our daughter spent the whole night in the hospital, and you didn't ask about her once. Where were you? At home, sleeping. You took her there, so you deal with it. Stop calling me to complain. I'm done walking back into that house. Go ahead and say that. You'll come dragging Ari back once you run out of food. You think I have time for this? Gisela ended the call. She held Ari close as tears soaked her daughter's shoulder. She checked her bank account. She had only a few $100s left. Hospital bills, medicine, food. She had no idea how they would get through the next few days. They stayed at the hospital for several days. Gisela bought meals for Ari, but she ate free meals handed out by a local charity outside the hospital. Every time she stood in line, she kept her head down, hoping no one would recognize her. When it was time to pay the last hospital bill, she called an old friend from high school to ask for help. Her friend didn't ask any questions. The money arrived within minutes. Gisela stared at the deposit notification on her phone, and her eyes filled again. The day Ari was discharged from the hospital, Gisela had no intention of going back home. She helped Ari into the lift and asked the driver to take them straight to her parents' house on the outskirts of Yuma. Antonio's family had lived there for years, and everyone in the neighborhood knew he was one of the strictest men around. Before Gisela could even set her bag down at the front porch, Antonio stepped outside and frowned. "You came straight here from the hospital instead of going home?" he asked. "What are you doing here?" "Dad, I need to talk to you." "About what?" "Could Ari and I stay here with you and Mom for a while?" Antonio dropped the cigarette he was smoking onto the ground and crushed it under his shoe. "You want this family to become the neighborhood's gossip? You have a husband and a child. Go back and work things out with your husband. Why are you here?" "I can't stay with him anymore, Dad." "You can actually say that without being ashamed? Once you're married, you're supposed to stay with your husband. Or do you have another man?" "No, Dad. He's not the same man I married. Every time he comes home, he finds a reason to yell at me. I can't take it anymore. If your husband says a few harsh words, you listen and put up with it. A married woman has to learn how to endure. I'm not letting a woman who walked out on her husband stay under my roof. Don't start copying what other people do." "I'm not copying anyone, Dad. I'll have your mother get dinner ready. Eat first, then take your daughter home. It looks like it's going to rain." Gisela swallowed her tears. "No, thank you. I'm not hungry." "Then leave while you still can. Ari hasn't been well. Don't drag her around in this weather. If something happens to her, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." Nora hurried out of the house with a dish towel still in her hand. "She just got here. Why are you talking to her like that?" "She's unhappy," Nora said. "We're her parents. We should be opening the door for her, not pushing her away." "What's so miserable about her life?" Antonio shot back. "Our life was harder than theirs, and neither of us ever walked away." "That's because you've always had to have everything your way," Nora answered. "I've stayed with you all these years because I had to, not because I was happy." "That's enough," Antonio raised his voice. "Keep talking and you'll regret it." Gisela looked from one parent to the other. The neighbors were probably listening from across the fence. She couldn't bear it anymore. She wiped her face and forced herself to stay calm. "Mom, I'm leaving. Stay here," Nora pleaded. "Forget what your father says. Let her stay, and I'll tear this family apart," Antonio snapped. "Please stop," Nora said. "Do you want me to teach you a lesson?" Antonio grabbed his wife's arm and pulled her toward the house. Gisela hurried after them. "Please, don't fight because of me. I won't stay here. I'll go back to my husband." Only then did Antonio let go of Nora's arm. He turned to Gisela, his expression still cold. "That's better. Don't embarrass me in front of other people. I married you off. Don't expect to come back. Whether your life is good or bad, you deal with it yourself. I'll never come back again. I'll take care of myself." Nora ran after her daughter and slipped a few bills into Gisela's hand. Her mouth trembled as she tried to hold back her tears. Gisela shook her head and refused the money. She turned and walked out through the gate as fast as she could. She knew that if she stayed 1 second longer, she would break down right there in the road. When she reached the street leading to her house, she saw Aiden standing beneath a large Palo Verde tree. The moment he saw them, he let out a mocking laugh. "I thought you were gone for good." Gisela didn't answer. She carried Ari straight into the house while Aiden's voice followed behind her. "You think you could make it out there? You're too useless to survive on your own. You really thought your old man would let you stay? With his temper, I'd be surprised if he put up with you for one night." After she got inside, Gisela laid Ari down on the bed and sank to the floor. Only then did she let herself cry. Ari saw her mother crying and started crying too. She reached up with her little hands and wiped the tears from Gisella's face. Gisela held her daughter close. She felt sorry for the little girl who was too young to understand what was happening, and she felt sorry for herself. How was she supposed to keep living like this? How could she get herself and Ari out of this life? That night, Aiden came home with the same cold expression on his face. Gisela was wiping down the kitchen counter when he dropped a stack of cash onto it. "You borrowed money to pay Ari's hospital bills, didn't you? Pay your friend back. I don't want people saying I don't take care of my wife and daughter." Gisela kept wiping the counter without saying a word. Aiden frowned. "You don't even know how to thank me?" "Thank you. What's with that tone? You don't care about your wife or your daughter anymore. No matter what I say, it annoys you. You know that, don't you? I've had a problem for a long time. Everything I do now is for Ari. Where I go and what I do is none of your business. Don't ask, and don't try to pick a fight with me. If you care about Ari, then pay for her medicine. If you don't, then don't pretend. She's my daughter. Of course I care about her. If it weren't for her, do you think I'd still be living with you?" Gisela looked straight at him. She kept her voice steady. "Do you have another woman?" "What if I do?" He didn't deny it. He didn't try to hide it. Gisela stood there without saying a word. She had imagined hearing that answer over and over again, but hearing it from him still hurt. "Why are you treating Ari and me like this? Take a good look at yourself. What do you have in this house? The house is mine. Everything in it belongs to me. What gives you the right to hold your head high? People always say a husband earns the money and a wife builds the home. I may not have a job, but I've never sat around doing nothing. Ari is sick all the time. I cook every meal, buy the groceries, wash the clothes, and take care of everything in this house. Do you think all of that means nothing? Those little chores? You actually think they matter? If I hired someone to do them, how much do you think it would cost me? If you're really done with me, then figure it out. Pay me for every year I spent taking care of you, and I'll take Ari and leave. Keep dreaming. If I throw you out right now, what are you going to do? And if we get divorced, someone like you, with no house and no income, isn't getting custody of Ari. I won't even let you see her. You'd really do that? Try me." Gisela stood there, her hands shaking. She didn't want to admit it, but everything he said was true. He owned the house. He had a steady job at Southwest Food Distribution. He had a stable income. What did she have? An associate degree in accounting that she hadn't used in 10 years. Hands worn rough from years of housework. A daughter who was always getting sick. She refused to accept it. No matter how hard things became, she was going to keep Ari with her. After thinking it through, she forced herself to stay calm. She would find proof that Aiden was having an affair. She would find proof that he had failed his family. Only then would she have a chance to win custody of her daughter. The next morning, Aiden handed Gisela $150. His voice wasn't as cold as it had been over the past few days. "Tomorrow is my boss's birthday. He's invited everyone to bring their families to the party. Use this to buy yourself a new outfit, get your hair done, and have your nails done. Don't embarrass me in front of everyone." Gisela knew she couldn't refuse. If his boss had allowed employees to bring their mistresses, Aiden wouldn't have insisted on taking his wife. She took the money to the local marketplace and bought a simple blue dress, a pair of low heels, and a few new dresses for Ari. That evening, by the time Aiden got home, Gisela had already showered, tied her hair neatly, and changed into her new dress. He looked at her for a few seconds. For a brief moment, he saw the woman he had worked so hard to win years ago. "You look a lot better like this, instead of looking sloppy all the time. If you gave me your whole paycheck, I wouldn't have to be so careful that I can't even buy myself a dress. So you're blaming me again?" "I'm not blaming anyone. I only blame myself." She paused. "Once Ari starts school, I'll get a job. I'll earn my own money and take care of both of us. I've been waiting for that day too. Let's go." The party was held at Cactus Creek Grill. Warm lights filled the restaurant, and every table was covered with white tablecloths. At least Gisela looked presentable enough that she didn't stand out among the well-dressed guests. One woman kept looking at her from the moment she walked in. After a while, the woman came straight over with a friendly smile. "You're Aiden's wife, aren't you?" "Yes, I am. I'm Harmony. I've worked with Aiden for years. I've heard him talk about you many times, but we've never met. Nice to meet you." Harmony pulled out a chair beside Gisela and ordered a glass of orange juice. She looked at Gisela with a friendly smile. "How have things been between you and Aiden lately?" "Why do you ask?" "Don't be upset with me. Aiden hasn't seemed like himself at work lately. He always looks distracted, and he doesn't rush home after work anymore. Whenever we ask, he just says it's family matters. We've worked together for years, so we worry about him." Gisela looked at Harmony for a moment. "Did Aiden tell you that?" "He did, but don't let it bother you. Men sometimes need someone to talk to." "Really? I haven't noticed anything. Everything's been normal at home. We talk every night before we go to bed. If something was bothering him, I think I'd know." Harmony's hand paused on her glass. "Really?" "Yes. So what you said surprised me. Maybe you misunderstood him. Maybe I did." Gisela smiled. "You and my husband seem pretty close. He even talks to you about our family." "It's nothing like that. We've just worked together for a long time." Before Gisela could say anything else, Aiden walked over. The moment he saw the two women sitting together, his expression changed. "Harmony, are you talking to my wife?" "I was just checking on her. She's lovely." Harmony stood up. "It's getting late. I'll head home now. Drive safely." Aiden didn't answer. He took Gisela by the arm and led her straight to the SUV. On the drive home, he seemed distracted. More than once, he almost drifted into the opposite lane. Gisela glanced at him from the passenger seat. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. You almost hit another car twice. You're not paying attention. What's on your mind?" "Work." He paused before asking, "What did Harmony say to you back there?" "Nothing much. She just asked me a few questions." "What kind of questions?" "She asked how things have been between us." I told her everything's normal. She looked surprised. "Surprised about what?" "I don't know. Maybe she heard some rumor about us." "Isn't that strange?" "She's only your coworker." "Why is she so interested in our family?" "How would I know?" "Did you tell her anything?" "No." "Stop talking nonsense. I just think it's strange. She talked like she knew you really well." Aiden tightened his grip on the steering wheel. His face grew tense. Gisela turned toward the window as the streetlight slipped past outside. She smiled to herself. The storm hadn't arrived yet, but the wind had already changed. When they got home, Gisela changed her clothes. Before going into the bathroom, she stopped outside the bedroom and looked toward the balcony. A woman's instincts were rarely wrong. She had just changed into her pajamas when she heard Aiden talking on the phone outside. He kept his voice low. "Why did you say those things to my wife?" Gisela couldn't hear Harmony's reply. A moment later, Aiden raised his voice. "Don't say another word to my wife. If you do, I won't let it go." There was another pause before he spoke again, his voice lower this time. "You don't have to threaten me. Whatever happened between us is over. Stop bothering me." Gisela walked into the bathroom. Warm water ran over her head. Everything had become clear. Aiden and Harmony had ended their relationship, but Harmony hadn't let go. That woman could become an important piece of the puzzle. If things were handled carefully, could two women who had both been betrayed by the same man end up on the same side? Gisela kept the thought to herself. She wasn't going to look for Harmony. If the time came, Harmony would find her. A woman who had been betrayed never let things end so easily. After her shower, Gisela went downstairs for a glass of warm water. Aiden came out of the bedroom. "Where are you going?" "I'm in the kitchen. Make me a bowl of instant ramen or something. I haven't eaten anything yet." Gisela walked into the kitchen, opened a pack of instant ramen, and started cooking without arguing. She would become the quiet, obedient wife Aiden wanted her to be, at least for the next few months, until she had everything she needed. "If you acted like this all the time, I wouldn't have to look anywhere else. I've been under a lot of pressure. That's why I've been so short-tempered. Just keep listening to me like this from now on." Gisela set the bowl in front of him and gave him a small smile. Aiden saw nothing unusual in it. He lowered his head and ate. Gisela stood behind him, washing the pot she had just used. The look in her eyes had turned so cold that if Aiden had looked back, he would have noticed it. That night, Gisela lay in bed listening to Aiden's phone vibrating beneath his pillow again and again. He silenced the calls several times, but the phone kept vibrating. In the end, he turned it off. Gisela lay still with her eyes open, staring at the dark ceiling. The door to this marriage had closed a long time ago. She just didn't know where the road beyond that door would lead. Wherever it led, she and Ari would walk it together. Over the next several days after the party, Aiden didn't miss a single meal at home. He left for work on time every morning and came home on time every evening. He sat down at the dinner table, ate several plates of food, praised the soup, said the shrimp tasted good, and sometimes even placed a piece of food into Ari's plate. But nights were different. Around 10 or 11 every night, the phone on the nightstand would start ringing. Sometimes Aiden declined the call right away. Other times he let it ring until it stopped on its own. On some nights, he quietly took the phone out to the balcony to talk. Gisela lay in bed with her back to him. Her eyes were closed, but she was listening. She didn't need to hear what they were saying. Knowing the calls were still coming was enough. One morning, Gisela took Ari to the local marketplace to buy some meat and vegetables. As they passed a spice stand, she looked up and saw Harmony standing there. This time, it wasn't a coincidence. Harmony had been waiting for her. "Hi, Gisela. We really do keep running into each other." Gisela looked at her with a hint of surprise before smiling. "I guess we do. Would you and Ari like to get something to drink? There's a coffee shop right outside the market. I need to get home and make lunch for Aiden." "Has Aiden been coming home for lunch lately?" "Yes." Gisela casually picked up a package of fresh shrimp and placed it in her shopping basket. "He likes honey garlic shrimp, so I'm making that today." Harmony looked at her for a moment. "There's something important I need to tell you. Then let's go sit down." They walked to Desert Bloom Coffee Shop just outside the market. Ari sat beside them, happily eating the lollipop Gisela had bought her. Harmony ordered a fresh orange juice and placed it in front of Gisela before getting straight to the point. "Do you know Aiden has another woman?" Gisela widened her eyes as if she had never imagined such a thing. "No, that can't be true. My husband isn't that kind of man. He comes home on time every day. He eats dinner with us. I think you've made a mistake. That's what you believe, but that's not the truth. Do you have any proof?" "I have proof. I just can't show it to you right now. I only wanted to warn you. I don't believe it." "Aiden loves Ari and me." Gisela stood up with Ari. "We'll be going now." Harmony quickly reached for her sleeve. "Wait. If we've come this far, I won't hide it anymore. You should divorce Aiden." Gisela turned around and stared at her. "What did you just say? Aiden doesn't have any feelings left for you. He told me that himself. What do you mean?" Harmony lowered her voice and placed a hand over Gisela's. "I'm the other woman." "What are you talking about, Harmony?" Gisela let her voice shake as tears filled her eyes. It wasn't difficult. The pain was real. She pulled her hand away. "You've been seeing my husband, and now you're telling me to divorce him? How could you do this to me?" "Aiden lied to me," Harmony said. "I never wanted to destroy your family. He told me the two of you were already getting divorced. That's why I agreed to date him. My husband and I still sleep in the same bed. We aren't getting divorced. How could you do this to me? My daughter is still so young. She's always in and out of the hospital. How is she supposed to grow up without her father? You have a child, too. Don't you know what it feels like to be a mother?" The louder Gisela spoke, the more people at the nearby tables began looking over. Harmony panicked, covered Gisela's mouth with one hand, and hurried her toward the parking lot. "Please calm down. I'll give you some money. All you have to do is agree to divorce Aiden. I don't believe you. I won't believe you unless I see proof." Harmony took out her phone and opened a hidden photo album. There were dozens of pictures of her and Aiden together. They were on vacation. They were having dinner. In one photo, Aiden wrapped his arms around her from behind with a wide smile on his face. In another, he kissed her forehead while they were both wearing white hotel robes. Gisela had already guessed the truth. Even so, seeing the man she had shared a bed with holding another woman still cut deeply. She hated him. She would never forgive him. Tears fell onto the phone screen. This time, they weren't an act. Harmony rested a hand on Gisela's shoulder. "Don't be sad. Men are like that. When it's over, it's over. Don't waste your life on someone who doesn't deserve you." "What do I get if I agree to divorce him?" "I'll give you enough money for you and Ari to start over." "Are you serious? The moment I see a divorce agreement with your signature on it, I'll transfer $6,000 to you." Gisela looked at Harmony in disbelief. "You're willing to spend $6,000 just to take someone else's husband? To let my daughter grow up without her father? How can you do something like this?" Harmony placed a hand on her stomach. Beneath her loose blouse, her belly had begun to show. Gisela looked down, and a chill ran through her. What about the baby you're carrying? My child deserves a father, too. If Aiden really loved you, he wouldn't have told me so many terrible things about you. I don't want to hear anymore. I'm not divorcing him. My daughter needs her father. I don't want her growing up without love or financial support. Gisela wiped away her tears, took Ari's hand, and walked away. She ignored Harmony calling after her. When she reached the corner of the market, she stopped beside a flowering tree and leaned against it. Her heart was beating so hard that even Ari noticed. Mom, are you okay? I'm okay. Gisela gently brushed Ari's hair away from her face. The first move had been made. Now it was time to let Aiden and Harmony deal with each other. That night, after dinner, Aiden went into the bathroom. Gisela took the opportunity to slide a tiny voice recorder beneath his pillow. Earlier that morning, she had bought it at Best Buy. It was no bigger than her little finger and could record continuously for 10 hours. Around midnight, just as Gisela had expected, Aiden's phone rang beneath his pillow. He quietly got out of bed and stepped onto the balcony. Gisela stayed still, breathing evenly as if she were fast asleep. She waited until she heard the balcony door slide shut again before turning over. Early the next morning, while Aiden was still asleep, Gisela quietly took the recorder back. She went into the kitchen, put on a pair of earbuds, and played the newest recording. Aiden's voice filled her ears. It was so gentle that she almost didn't recognize it. Hey, why are you calling this late? I miss you. I miss you too. My wife and daughter are right here beside me. I can't talk for long. Sweetheart, when are you bringing me the money? Give me a few more days. I'm trying to come up with $6,000. That's not the kind of money I can pull together overnight. You promised you'd take care of me. Don't disappoint me. I know. He laughed softly. Do you miss me or do you miss my money? Of course I miss you. I'll see you tomorrow. Bring me a breakfast burrito tomorrow morning. I've been craving one. Okay, I'll get up early and bring you one. Gisela sat there with the earbuds still in her ears. She didn't cry. She had no tears left for a man like him. Something inside her had turned cold and hard. So Aiden had another woman now. She sounded younger than Harmony, with the soft, playful voice of someone in her 20s. He had spent money on Harmony, and now he was spending money on someone else. Harmony had been thrown aside, and she didn't even know it yet. Gisela gave a faint smile. She copied the recording onto 2 USB drives. One went into her sewing box. The other she tucked inside Ari's medical records folder. Then she opened Facebook and searched for Harmony's profile. After a few minutes, she found it and sent a message. Are you free? I'd like to talk to you in private. 3 minutes later, Harmony replied. The next afternoon, the 2 women met at a coffee shop near the industrial district. Gisela placed a pair of earbuds on the table and slid them toward Harmony. Harmony put them on and pressed play. Gisela watched as her face grew paler with every passing second. By the time the recording ended, Harmony's hands were clenched so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. How could he do this to me? I don't know, Gisela replied. What are you going to do? I'm not letting this go. That has to be the new marketing intern who started last month. She's always finding excuses to stop by Aiden's desk, asking questions, borrowing things. She said she was planning to start graduate school too. Graduate school costs a fortune, so that's where the money is going. Harmony's voice hardened. I'm going to make her pay. I've thought about this a lot, Gisela said. I wasn't going to tell you, but we're both in the same situation, and I couldn't keep it to myself. Ari is only 4 years old. You're pregnant. I don't want your baby to go through what my daughter has. Harmony looked at her. You don't blame me anymore? We're both women. What would blaming you change? But that girl is taking money from my husband. I can't accept that. Harmony leaned forward. So you're willing to divorce Aiden now? Yes. Harmony closed her hand into a fist. Her bright red nails dug into her palm. Jealousy had driven every bit of reason from her mind. She had believed Aiden belonged to her, only to learn she had been betrayed too. Gisela sat across from her with a quiet expression. She no longer hated Harmony. She only felt sorry for her and sorry for herself. When a woman falls in love with the wrong man, it doesn't matter whether she's the wife or the mistress. In the end, they're both the ones left in tears. Over the next several days, Gisela quietly bought a used phone and created a new account online. She searched for beginner courses on selling online and live streaming on TikTok Shop. She didn't have much money, but she had time and determination. This was the only way she could earn an income while staying with Ari. Whenever she asked Aiden for money, she told him it was for Ari's milk, medicine, or other household expenses. Lately, Aiden had been in a good mood, so he handed her the money without asking many questions. Every week, Gisela managed to set aside a small amount from her weekly allowance. She hid the cash inside a cookbook in the kitchen cabinet, a place Aiden had never bothered to open. Harmony moved faster than Gisela had expected. Early Monday morning, just after the president of Southwest Food Distribution walked into his office, he found a large envelope on his desk with no sender's name. Inside were dozens of printed photographs, several USB drives, and a short typed letter. Everything pointed to one thing. Aiden, the senior sales representative, was having an affair. The company president was an old man who couldn't stand scandals involving his employees. By noon, everyone in the sales department had heard about it. That afternoon, Aiden was called into human resources. When he came home that evening, his face had gone pale. He didn't touch his dinner. He went straight into the bedroom, shut the door, and didn't say a word to Gisela. She pretended not to know anything. Did something happen? Why aren't you eating? Nothing. Stop asking. Are you feeling sick? I said nothing happened. Are you deaf? Leave me alone. Gisela smiled to herself. She picked up the dinner plates and quietly walked out of the room. The next day, and the day after that, and the day after that, Aiden came home later each night. The smell of alcohol on him grew stronger. One evening, he stumbled and fell just outside the front door. Gisela had to help him into the house. She didn't ask any questions. She already knew what had happened. Harmony had given him exactly what he deserved. At work, Aiden had been completely isolated. Thalia, the young marketing intern, had changed her attitude just as quickly to protect herself. Aiden withdrew another $6,000 from his savings and gave it to her. He told her it was to help pay for graduate school. In reality, he was paying for her silence. Thalia took the money without any expression. One weekend afternoon, Aiden asked Thalia to meet him at a quiet coffee shop. He had no idea Harmony had followed him from the company parking lot. As soon as Aiden sat down across from Thalia, he spoke first. "Why haven't you answered my calls or my messages? So Harmony can come after me too?" Thalia shot back. "She already found me and warned me. Harmony and I are over. You don't have to be afraid of her." "Really?" A voice came from beside them. Harmony walked into the coffee shop one slow step at a time. Her red lipstick had been freshly applied. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She simply pulled out a chair beside Aiden and sat down as calmly as if they were having lunch together. "So we're really over?" Aiden froze. The color drained from his face. "Harmony, what are you doing here?" "I came to meet this young woman." Harmony looked at Thalia. "She's pretty. So this is where all the money I gave you ended up." "Stop talking nonsense," Aiden snapped. "You gave me that money willingly. I never forced you. I was a fool for believing you. If I'd been smarter, I wouldn't be sitting here today." Harmony reached into her purse, took out her phone, opened the photo album, then played the recording. She slid the phone across the table to Thalia. "Take a look. Then you'll know what kind of man you're sitting with. I've already sent all of this to his wife. She's the one suffering at home right now. You should go comfort your wife instead of sitting here with your little girlfriend." Thalia picked up the phone. As she scrolled through the photos, the color in her face kept changing. Harmony rested a hand on her stomach. "As for this baby, I'm raising this child on my own. I don't need him to take responsibility. I don't want my child growing up with a man like him as a father." She stood up, straightened her blouse, and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she looked back one last time. "One more thing. That girl isn't as innocent as she looks. She's already married. I heard her husband has quite a criminal record." Thalia threw the phone onto the table and stood up. Aiden reached for her arm. "Wait, let's talk. There's nothing left to say. Stay away from me." "What about the money I gave you?" Thalia let out a cold laugh. "You think you can ask for that back?" She walked away without another word. Aiden rushed after her. The moment he stepped outside, a man came out of nowhere and punched him square in the face. Aiden fell onto the pavement. Blood poured from his nose. The man spat on the ground, turned around, and walked away without saying a word. Lying there beneath the yellow streetlights, Aiden realized for the first time that he had been the biggest fool of all. Thalia had never wanted him. She wanted his money. Harmony had never truly loved him either. She had only been lonely. Yet he had been foolish enough to believe that women wanted him, while a wife had been waiting for him at home all along. Aiden got back into his SUV and drove home like a drunk man. As he turned onto his street, he saw a small moving truck parked in front of the house. Several movers were carrying furniture outside. He slammed on the brakes, jumped out of the SUV, and ran toward them. "What are you doing? We were hired to move these things." "Who hired you?" Gisela pulled the last suitcase out of the house. She was neatly dressed in a white blouse and black slacks. Her hair was tied into a bun. There wasn't a single tear on her face. She looked at Aiden. "You're home. What's going on? I'm leaving. Where are you going? Anywhere but here. If you leave, Ari stays." Gisela stopped and turned around. The look she gave him was so cold that Aiden would remember it for years. "You want me to leave my daughter with a father who doesn't care about her? A man who keeps cheating with one woman after another, even with people from his own company? Do you want your daughter growing up knowing that's who her father is?" She looked straight at him. "I have all the evidence I need. I've already filed for divorce. You should start preparing yourself." "I'm not getting divorced, and you're never getting custody of Ari. What do you have?" "No house, no job, no income. No judge is going to give you our daughter." "You're right. I don't have any of those things. But I love my daughter, and I'm a mother who has always been there for her. If you think you can control everything, then we'll see what happens." Gisela rolled her suitcase toward the truck. One of the movers opened the back door and loaded her belongings inside. Ari was already sitting in the front passenger seat, holding her teddy bear close. She looked at her father through the windshield with wide, confused eyes. Aiden stood in the yard. He wanted to run over and hold his daughter, but he couldn't make himself move. That night, for the first time since they got married, he sat alone in his own house and felt how empty it had become. Gisela was staying at a small roadside motel on the edge of town. Ari was asleep, still sucking her thumb. Gisela sat on the edge of the bed and opened her banking app. She had $250 left. That was everything she had to start a new life. She didn't cry. She had cried enough. She took out a notebook, opened to a blank page, and began writing. Day 1. Ari slept well. I have $250 left. Tomorrow, I'll look for a place to rent, find suppliers, and keep learning how to live stream. She closed the notebook, turned off the light, and lay down beside her daughter. That night, for the first time in many months, Gisela slept without a single nightmare. She had already reached the very bottom. From there, the only direction left was forward. The next morning, Gisela checked out of the motel. She helped Ari into a bus bound for her parents' neighborhood outside Yuma. There were only a handful of passengers on board, each carrying worries of their own. Gisela didn't speak to anyone. She sat by the window, watching the desert landscape slip past. When the bus stopped, she carried 2 suitcases off with one hand while holding Ari's hand with the other. A few women outside a nearby convenience store glanced at her and whispered to one another. Gisela kept her head down and walked on. At this point, she had nothing left to hide. As soon as she reached the front yard, Antonio, who had been drinking coffee on the porch, stood up. "What are you doing back here?" Nora came out of the kitchen with a basket of vegetables in her hands. One look at Gisela and the luggage was enough for her to understand everything. She set the basket down and reached for one of the suitcases. "Come inside. Change your clothes. I'll get lunch ready." "Nobody's eating anything," Antonio cut in. "First, tell me what all this means. Why did you bring all your things back here?" "From now on, Gisela and Ari are staying here with us," Nora said. "Have you lost your mind?" Antonio snapped. "I already made myself clear last time. Didn't the 2 of you understand a word I said?" "The one who doesn't understand is you," Nora answered. "She's your daughter. How can you watch her suffer like this? Stop talking," Antonio pointed at her. "Do you know how ashamed people will make us feel if our married daughter comes back home?" "I'm not ashamed," Nora said. "If you are, then you can be ashamed by yourself. I'm only ashamed that we couldn't protect our own daughter. When she needed us most, we failed her as parents. You want to start a fight? If you won't let Gisela and Ari stay here, then I don't need this house either. We'll see who takes care of you after that. I've put up with your temper for decades because I cared too much about what other people thought. I'm not letting my daughter go through the same thing. I'm going to protect her. You've got a lot of nerve. Antonio grabbed the rattan cane leaning against the wall. Nora was quicker. She caught it before he could lift it. You want to hit me? Go ahead. The moment you do, I'm divorcing you. I don't need this house anymore. She snapped the cane in half and threw it onto the ground. The sharp crack echoed across the yard. Antonio stood there in silence. Nora had lived with him for more than 30 years. In all that time, she had never stood up to him like this. Even she didn't know where she had found the strength. Antonio slowly lowered his hand and took a step back. He looked at his wife with shock and anger, but he had nothing left to say. He turned away, sat down on the porch, took a cigarette from his pocket, and lit it. After a long drag, he muttered, "What a miserable life." He didn't say another word. Nora led Gisela into the house. She changed Ari into clean clothes, then carried her back outside to sit with her grandfather. Ari sat beside him while Nora peeled a banana for her and told her stories about an old hen that always laid eggs on top of the kitchen cabinets. Antonio stayed on the porch, smoking one cigarette after another. By dinner time, Gisela filled a plate and set it beside him. "Dad, dinner's ready." Antonio didn't turn around. He picked up the bottle beside his chair and poured himself a small glass. "There's really no other way? You have to get divorced?" "I'm exhausted, Dad." He stopped caring about Ari and me. He cheated on us. Antonio slammed his hand against the table. "That bastard." This time, he wasn't talking about Gisela. He was talking about Aiden. Gisela knew it the moment she heard him. She sat down beside him. "Dad, I never wanted you and Mom to be embarrassed because of me, but things have gone too far. Please help me. Ari is still little. She can't keep moving from place to place with me. I don't know how I can do this by myself." Antonio let out a long breath. "You're already here. What else can I do? Did you see the way your mother looked at me? She was ready to tear me apart. Don't be angry with Mom. She only did it because she loves me. You think I don't love you?" Nora walked over and sat across from him. "The problem is that you've always been more afraid of what people would say than of your own daughter suffering." Antonio frowned. "Here we go again. Think about how you've treated your children all these years," Nora continued. "And look at her. She still worries about you." "All right, enough," Antonio said. "I'm not throwing them out. Is that what you wanted to hear?" "That's better," Nora replied. "Now that Gisela is home, we'll help take care of Ari so she can build her business. She can't keep wandering from place to place forever." That night, Gisela lay on the same bed she had slept in as a little girl. Ari was asleep beside her, breathing softly. Gisela reached over and brushed her daughter's hair away from her face. Outside, the sound of insects drifted through the yard. For the first time in months, she took a long, steady breath. The weight that had been pressing on her chest was finally gone. The next morning, Gisela got up early. She added the money she had managed to save to the $100 Nora had quietly slipped into her hand the night before. Then she took the bus to a wholesale market in the city. She bought inexpensive household items, plastic tubs, storage baskets, measuring spoons, kitchen towels, and food containers. None of them were expensive, but every household needed them. For days, she posted her products online without receiving a single order. She didn't give up. Whenever Ari took an afternoon nap, Gisela sat in the backyard and practiced live streaming with her old phone. The first time she turned on the camera and heard her own voice through the speaker, she blushed and ended the stream. Then she tried again, and again. By the 10th attempt, she had stopped feeling embarrassed. During the second month, orders finally began coming in. 5 a day, then 10, then 20. Gisela woke up at 4 every morning to pack orders before the courier arrived to pick them up. She finished lunch in just a few minutes before getting back to work. At night, she live-streamed until 11. Some nights, she fell asleep the moment she lay down, without even turning off the light. A month later, she rented a small storefront that served as both her storage space and her live-stream studio. She bought a used car. Every morning, she drove Ari to preschool, dropped her off, then headed back to open the shop. One morning, Gisela got up early, planning to buy a few good ingredients for her parents. Before she reached the end of the street, she heard Antonio's voice raised in anger. "What did you just say? Say it again. Am I wrong?" Another man answered. Your daughter got married, then all of a sudden she came back to live with you. Don't you think there's something wrong with that? What's wrong with it? Antonio shot back. She wasn't happy, so she got divorced. If she can't stay with her parents, where is she supposed to sleep? Out on the street? If she was such a good wife, why did her marriage fall apart? She left her husband. When a tree stops bearing fruit, you cut it down. Why keep it? She's my daughter. I love her. None of you have ever put food on my family's table, so don't tell me how to raise my child. Gisela stood quietly behind a tree at the corner, listening. She recognized the other voice. It belonged to one of Antonio's longtime friends. His own daughter had divorced the year before, but he had refused to let her come home. She was now staying with her older sister in another city and struggling to get by. Nobody told me what to do, Antonio continued. But I'll tell you this, if my daughter hadn't come home, she'd be the one suffering. At first, I thought the same way you do. That's why my daughter had to endure so much. You should think about that. The two men kept arguing. They had been friends for decades, yet they were ready to fall out over a single conversation. Hidden beneath the shade of the tree, Gisela's eyes filled with tears. The man she had always thought only knew how to scold his wife and children was now standing in the middle of the street defending his daughter. That alone warmed her heart. She quietly took another route to the market. She bought 2 fresh salmon fillets, a bundle of spinach, and some lean beef. When she got home, she made a pot of beef vegetable soup, Antonio's favorite meal when he was younger. After his morning walk, Antonio sat down at the table and breathed in the smell of the soup. His face relaxed. It's been a long time since I've had this. He glanced at Nora. You make the same things over and over. I got tired of them. Then why don't you cook? Nora answered. In all these years, have you ever made me a meal? Cooking is a woman's job. You should stop thinking like that. Nora smiled. You can't win an argument with me anymore, Antonio chuckled. It was the first time Gisela had seen her father laugh like that. He filled 2 bowls with soup and placed one in front of Nora. I didn't cook it, but I can at least serve you a bowl. Nora gave him a sideways look, but the corners of her mouth lifted into a smile. Gisela sat at the table with Ari on her lap, watching her parents. Some marriages lasted 30 or 40 years without ever becoming sweet or romantic. But there were marriages that survived hardship, arguments, and disappointment because, at the end of the day, they still sat down at the same table. Her own marriage no longer had a path that could be saved. After Gisela filed for divorce, the court scheduled a mediation hearing. It was the first time she had seen Aiden since the day she moved out. He showed up with overgrown hair. His wrinkled dress shirt was buttoned wrong, and he smelled of alcohol mixed with stale sweat. Gisela chose to stand several feet away from him. Aiden let out a bitter laugh. So you look down on me now? I've lost my job. Really? What was the point of going back? Nobody at the company would even look at me anymore. I quit. What about your girlfriends? Gisela asked. Aren't they taking good care of you? They're gone. I ran out of money. He paused. How about we don't get divorced? Can we start over? I never planned to do that. I'll fight for custody of Ara. We'll see if you can really support her on your own. Gisela didn't answer. She walked into the mediation room. Things were different now. She had a registered business, steady bank statements, and a storefront that was already established. More importantly, she had plenty of evidence proving Aiden had failed as both a husband and a father. She believed she had a real chance of winning custody of Ari. The first mediation ended without an agreement. Gisela refused to reconcile. She signed the paperwork scheduling the court hearing and walked out. As soon as she stepped into the hallway, Aiden hurried after her. Wait, what else do you want? Do you know why I haven't come looking for you? Why would you? We have nothing to do with each other anymore, she paused. Then again, you've been too busy going to those places you like. You probably haven't even had time to think about your daughter. Aiden's face tightened. Who told you that? I already submitted all my evidence to the court. It won't be long before we're complete strangers. Aiden grabbed her wrist and pulled her toward him. The smell of alcohol on his breath made her sick. You've been following me, haven't you? Let go. She tried to pull free, but his grip only tightened. Gisela cried out. Her voice echoed through the empty hallway. A man in a dark suit, who had been walking toward the elevators, stopped and came over. What's going on here? Mind your own business, Aiden snapped. Walk away. This is a courthouse, the man replied. There are security cameras everywhere. If she files another complaint, you're only making things worse for yourself. She's my wife. Stay out of it. Gisela finally managed to pull free and stepped behind the man. Her breathing was uneven. Please help me. The man wasn't especially tall, but his broad shoulders blocked Aiden's path. He looked directly at him. I'm an attorney. Let her go. If you keep this up, I'll help her file another case against you today. Aiden swallowed hard. He shot Gisela a hateful look before turning around and walking away. The sound of his footsteps faded down the hallway. Are you all right? I'm fine. Thank you. The man reached into his jacket and handed her a business card. I'm Michael, with Michael Grant Law Office. If he keeps bothering you, call me. Gisela accepted the card and slipped it into her wallet, where she kept an old photo of Ari as a baby. On the day of the hearing, the judge granted the divorce and awarded Gisela full custody of Ari. Aiden refused to accept the decision. Right outside the courthouse, he lost control and tried to pull Ari out of Gisela's arms. If several people nearby hadn't stepped in to stop him, he might have taken her. Gisela held Ari as tightly as she could and backed herself against the wall before she was finally able to catch her breath. Over the next several weeks, Gisela devoted herself to her storefront. Aiden wandered around the marketplace where her shop was located. Sometimes he stood across the street watching her. Sometimes he showed up drunk. Other times he came neatly dressed and pretended he was only passing by. One day, he sent her a long message apologizing. He promised he would change and begged her to let him see Ari. Gisela read the message without replying. Then she blocked his number. One weekend, Ari didn't have preschool, so she stayed at the storefront with Gisela. That night, the weather was unusually warm. Gisela had been asleep for barely half an hour when she heard Ari crying. She switched on the light and placed a hand on her daughter's forehead. Ari was burning up. Her breathing had become heavy. Without stopping to think, Gisela picked up her wallet, slipped on her sandals, and rushed outside with Ari in her arms. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. The streets were almost empty. She managed to flag down a lift. The older driver heard it was an emergency and drove straight to Yuma Regional Medical Center without another question. The emergency department was still brightly lit. A female doctor in her 40s, wearing glasses with her hair tied back, examined Ari before turning to Gisela. She has a viral infection. Her fever is very high, so we're giving her medication through an IV to bring it down. Stay with her for about an hour. Once her temperature comes down, she'll feel much better. Gisela sat on a plastic chair outside the treatment room beneath the buzzing fluorescent lights. She held Ari's tiny hand in hers. It was so hot that her own hand seemed to grow warm. She leaned over and kissed her daughter's forehead. Mom's right here. Don't be scared. Ari didn't answer. She only whispered, Mom, before closing her eyes again. Gisela stayed beside her all night without sleeping. Around 6 the next morning, Ari's fever had gone down, and she was transferred to a regular room. Gisela hurried outside the hospital to buy a bowl of chicken noodle soup. She was in such a rush that she accidentally bumped into a man walking in. I'm so sorry. I wasn't paying attention. She looked up. The man staring back at her looked just as surprised. It was Michael, the attorney who had helped her at the courthouse. Gisela? You still remember my name? Of course I do. Who are you here to see? My daughter. She had a high fever last night. She's doing better now. They moved her to a regular room this morning. What about you? I'm here to visit my nephew. He's been admitted for a few days. Gisela nodded. She didn't ask any more questions. They said goodbye and walked in opposite directions. Gisela bought the soup and hurried back upstairs to Ari. When Gisela walked into the room with the soup, she realized there were 4 beds inside. A young mother sat beside the first bed. An older woman was sitting beside the second. In the third bed, a 5-year-old boy was asleep beneath a blanket. An elderly woman with silver hair sat next to him, peeling an apple. Gisela set the soup on the bedside table, helped Ari sit up, and fed her 1 spoonful at a time. The older woman across the room smiled. How old is your little girl? She's 3.5. She's adorable. What's wrong with her? She just has a fever. Poor thing. Is it only the 2 of you here? Where's her father? Gisela looked down at the bowl in her hands and gave a faint smile. It's just the 2 of us. The woman nodded without asking another question. Instead, she slid the plate of sliced apples toward Gisela. Have some apples. You've been up all night taking care of her." "Thank you." At that moment, the door opened. Michael walked in carrying 2 takeout containers of chicken noodle soup. He spotted Gisela beside Ari's bed, paused for a second, then smiled. "Looks like we meet again." Gisela smiled back. The woman across the room looked from one to the other. "You two know each other?" "Yes," Michael replied. "This is Gisela. I helped her at the courthouse a while back." "Gisela, this is my mom, London." The 2 women nodded politely to each other. Inside the small hospital room, a few simple greetings were enough to make everyone feel a little closer. London pushed the plate of apples closer to Gisela again. "Sit down and make yourself comfortable. Ari is such a sweet little girl." She pointed toward the boy sleeping in the next bed. "His name is Ben. He's my grandson. His parents died in a car accident when he was 2 years old. Since then, the 3 of us have been raising him together. I think these 2 kids will get along." Just then, Ben woke up. He rubbed his eyes, reached for a stuffed animal beside his pillow, and held it out to Ari. "You can play with this." Ari's eyes lit up as she accepted it. She hadn't smiled all morning, but the moment another child offered her a toy, a bright smile spread across her face. The sound of the 2 children laughing filled the room. Michael placed the takeout containers on the table and slid one toward his mother. "Mom, I picked up your favorite chicken noodle soup." Then he turned to Gisela. "Would you like some?" "I didn't know you were here, or I would have picked up another container." "Thank you, but I'm fine. Ari and I are having soup." "All right, if you want anything later, let me know. I'll pick it up for you." That was all he said before helping Ben with his breakfast. London watched Gisela from time to time while they ate. A young woman in a simple t-shirt, taking care of her daughter alone in the hospital. She couldn't explain why her heart ached for her. It was the feeling of a woman who had lived through many hardships looking at another woman who was still living through hers. They spent the whole day together in the same hospital room. Ari and Ben became friends almost immediately. They rolled a small plastic ball back and forth across the floor, laughing together. The adults talked. London shared stories about her hometown in the mountains a few hours away, about the vegetable garden behind her house, and the hens that wandered around the yard. Gisela talked about the small storefront she had just rented, and her dream of buying a little house for herself and Ari one day. Michael sat quietly near the window. He didn't say much. Every now and then, his eyes drifted toward Gisela. There was a quiet warmth in the way he looked at her, but she either didn't notice it or chose not to. Outside, the morning sun climbed higher, and the hospital hallways filled with people coming and going. Inside the small room, the laughter of 2 children echoed softly. Gisela sat there holding Ari's hand. For the first time in many months, she didn't feel that this day had to be another painful one. One chapter of her life had already ended. She didn't know what was waiting ahead. She only knew that her daughter was feeling better today, that a stranger had shared a plate of apples with her, and that she hadn't cried once. For one day, that was enough. A week passed in the hospital like a slow-moving film. On Monday morning, Ari and Ben were discharged together. Before leaving, London smiled at Gisela and told her to stop by the house whenever she had time for a meal. While Gisela wasn't paying attention, she quietly saved her phone number and wrote down her home address on a small piece of paper, then slipped it into Ari's little hand. Gisela smiled and gave London the address of her storefront as well. London wasn't a woman who talked much, but there was warmth in the way she looked at people. Gisela drove Ari back to the shop. After spending several days in the hospital, the number of viewers on her live streams had dropped noticeably. She threw herself back into work, live streaming from morning until late at night. Every day, she smiled brightly in front of the camera, but by the time she crawled into bed, her eyes were heavy with exhaustion. Some nights she packed orders until 1 or 2 in the morning, moving as quietly as she could so she wouldn't wake Ari, who slept in the corner of the shop. One evening, Gisela was in the small kitchen reheating leftovers when she heard the front gate creak open. She looked up in surprise. London walked in carrying a stack of food containers. "You can't live on food like that," she said. "Miss London? When did you get here?" "I called, but you didn't answer. The gate wasn't locked, so I came in. Next time, make sure you lock it when it's just you and Ari here. You never know who might walk in." "Yes, ma'am, you're right. The courier picked up the orders this afternoon, and I forgot to lock the gate afterward." London set the containers on the table and opened them one by one. The smell of braised pork filled the room. There was also a container of spinach soup with ground turkey and another with black pepper fish. I figured you hadn't eaten yet, so I brought dinner. Gisela smiled. That's perfect. I was just about to make instant ramen. Your stomach deserves better than that. Go get some bowls. Gisela laughed softly. She brought over 2 bowls and a pair of forks. London served the rice, then added pork and fish to Gisela's bowl without asking whether she wanted any. Did you just come up from your hometown? Gisela asked. No, this time I'm staying here for good. My son and I have been living in different places for too long. Michael doesn't take good care of himself, and I can't stop worrying. Besides, I'd like to see him get married someday. I called him all the time back home, but half the time he never answered. He works too hard, eats whatever he can find, and keeps wearing himself out. Gisela lifted her bowl and smiled. Michael is kind and dependable. It's hard to believe he isn't married. London laughed. That's exactly the problem. He's too picky. Every woman I introduce, he finds a reason to turn down. If she's beautiful, he says she has no depth. If she's well-educated, he says she's too serious. I've almost given up on him. Just then, Ari woke up and ran outside after hearing voices. The moment she saw London, her face lit up. Grandma, where's Ben? Ben's at home. London smiled. I'll bring him over to play with you tomorrow. Okay. Ari wrapped her arms around London's leg. London gently patted her head. Watching them together filled Gisela's heart with warmth. It had been a long time since someone had come into her shop and shared a meal with her. She had almost forgotten what that felt like. London stayed until after 9 that evening. Before leaving, she stopped at the front gate and gave it a careful look. This gate is too loose. Tomorrow I'll have Michael come over and fix it. You don't have to. I can fix it myself. How? Do you even know how to weld? Do you have the right tools? Stop trying to handle everything by yourself. If there's a man willing to lend you a hand, let him. Gisela didn't argue. She walked London to the gate and stood there until the rideshare carrying her disappeared around the corner. Over the next several days, London stopped by the shop almost every day. Sometimes she brought a pot of homemade soup. Other times she arrived with a bag of fresh tortillas or sandwiches. On some afternoons, she stayed behind the counter to help Gisela organize inventory. She worked quickly, had a sharp eye, and could add up prices in her head faster than a calculator. One day, while Gisela was live streaming, London stood behind the camera holding up handwritten price signs so customers could see them clearly. Before long, the comments started pouring in. Is that your mom? You two are adorable together. Your mom is so sweet! Gisela couldn't help smiling as she read them. None of the viewers knew that the woman standing beside her was someone she had met only a short time ago. One Saturday afternoon, Gisela was packing customer orders when the gate bell rang. London had gone back to her hometown for the day, so only Gisela and Ari were at the shop. She walked over and opened the gate. The moment she saw who was standing outside, she froze. It was Aiden. His hair was unkempt, and his clothes were no longer as neat as they used to be. He was carrying a small bag of toys and forced a gentle smile onto his face. I want to see Ari. Gisela couldn't stop a father from seeing his daughter, so she stepped aside and let him in. Aiden looked around the shop before turning back to her. Looks like business is going pretty well. No wonder you don't need anyone anymore. Where's Ari? Ari was sitting in the back of the shop. When she heard her father's voice, she froze. She still remembered him, but what she felt was fear more than affection. Gisela stayed by the kitchen doorway. Something didn't feel right. Aiden's eyes landed on Ari's suitcase in the corner. He walked over, grabbed it, and dragged it toward the door. Pack your things, sweetheart. Come home with Daddy. We have lots of toys at home. The house has air conditioning. You shouldn't be living in a place like this. Ari burst into tears. Gisela rushed over and grabbed the suitcase back. What are you doing? The court already ruled that I have custody. Don't do this. Don't wave those court papers in my face. She's my daughter. Do you know how much I've missed her? You've never had to live apart from your child, so you don't understand. Gisela stared at him. You never missed her before. She was always sick, and you never cared once. Now you're telling me you miss her? You cheated on us over and over again? Did you think about your daughter then? You spent your money on your girlfriends? Did you ever save $1 for Ari? You never once showed any compassion for us. Aiden hesitated for a second, but the anger returned to his face. He grabbed Ari and pulled her against him, holding her arms so tightly that she cried out. "Mom, it hurts!" Gisela turned pale and rushed toward them. Aiden shoved her away. She slammed into a display shelf, and stacks of plastic containers crashed onto the floor. Just then, footsteps hurried through the front gate. "Gisela, it's me!" London called out. She had just returned from her hometown carrying Ben and a basket of fresh vegetables. The moment she stepped into the yard and saw what was happening, she stopped in her tracks. Ben pointed at Aiden and shouted, "Why is that man hurting Ari?" London set the basket on the ground, pulled out her phone, and quickly made a call. The moment someone answered, she said only one sentence. "Michael, I'm at Gisela's shop. Come now." Aiden still had hold of Ari's arm and was trying to pull her away. London walked straight toward him and blocked the doorway. "Where do you think you're taking that child? Who are you?" Aiden demanded. "Stay out of my family. You're her ex-husband, aren't you? I know everything. Let go of that little girl. Or what? Touch either of them again, and I'll see you back in court." Aiden fell silent. The elderly woman standing in front of him was small, her hair almost completely gray, but there wasn't a trace of fear in her voice. He hesitated. Outside, the sound of tires screeching to a stop echoed from the street. Michael ran into the shop wearing nothing more than a black t-shirt, breathing hard as though he had sprinted the whole way. One look was all he needed to understand the situation. He stepped between Aiden and Gisela. "You and Gisela are divorced. You have no right to come here and take Ari." "I don't care about rights," Aiden shouted. "Who are you? Why do I keep seeing you everywhere? What's going on between you and my wife?" "She's not your wife anymore," Michael replied, "and Ari is still my daughter. You think you can stop me? Stop now while you still can. Or what?" Michael's voice remained calm. The security cameras inside the shop recorded everything. "There's enough evidence here to charge you with trespassing and assaulting a child. Combined with Gisela's case, this could become a criminal matter. Do you want to find out what happens next?" Aiden glanced around. Small security cameras were mounted in the corners of the shop, their green lights blinking. He swallowed hard. His grip on Ari slowly loosened. Ari broke free and ran straight into Gisela's arms. Aiden stood there for another moment, his face flushed red before turning pale. Without another word, he turned around and walked out of the shop. Gisela sank to the floor with Ari wrapped tightly in her arms. Both mother and daughter were shaking. Ari buried her face against her mother's shoulder, still sobbing. London hurried over, knelt beside them, and gently rubbed Gisela's back. "It's over now. You're both safe." Michael stood quietly for a moment. Then he bent down, picked up the plastic containers scattered across the floor, and put them back on the shelves. When everything was in place, he turned to Gisela. "I don't think you should stay here anymore." He glanced at his mother. "Mom and I have been talking about this." London nodded. "Why don't you and Ari come stay with us for a while? The house is big, and there's an extra workshop in the backyard. You can use it for your business and live there too." Gisela quickly shook her head. "No, I couldn't. I've already imposed on you and Michael too much." "You're not imposing on anyone," Michael said. "The most important thing right now is keeping you and Ari safe. He didn't get what he wanted today. Tomorrow he may come up with another way. If we're not prepared, you'll always have to live in fear." He paused before continuing. "As for the money, you can pay rent every month, just like you do now. Think of it as renting a different place. At least there will be people around, and you'll both be safer." Gisela looked at Michael. For the first time, her eyes rested on his face a little longer. He wasn't as tall as Aiden, and his features weren't as sharp, but there was something about him that felt steady and dependable whenever he spoke. She had almost forgotten what it felt like to trust a man. After a long moment, she gave a small nod. "Thank you. Ari and I would be grateful to stay with you." 2 days later, Gisela and Ari moved into Michael's house. It sat on the outskirts of Yuma, with a spacious yard shaded by citrus trees and a large workshop facing the road. Michael had already hired workers to clean the workshop from top to bottom. The shelves had been repaired, and the walls had been freshly painted. Gisela looked around before turning to him. "You've done so much." "I don't know how to thank you," Michael smiled. "You don't have to. Think of it as an investment. As long as your business keeps growing and you keep paying the rent, that's enough for me." After moving in, Gisela finally experienced what a peaceful life felt like. She no longer worried that Aiden might suddenly appear at her door. There were always people around the house. Ben and Ari played together every day, running through the yard beneath the trees until their laughter echoed across the property. London took care of everyone as if they had always been one family. Every morning she got up early to make breakfast. Every meal included a pot of homemade soup. She even bought Gisela a few new blouses so she would look more presentable during her live streams. As the days passed, Gisela's business continued to improve. Orders kept increasing. Some nights she worked until very late. Whenever that happened, London would quietly knock on the workshop door and bring her a mug of warm milk. "Drink this before you keep working." One evening, the two women were sealing shipping boxes together when London spoke casually. "You've helped me so much. I don't even know how I'll ever repay you," London smiled. "Then become my daughter-in-law." Gisela laughed awkwardly. "You're teasing me again. I'm serious. After spending all this time with you, I know exactly what kind of woman you are. You and Michael would make a wonderful couple. I think you'd be happy together." Gisela shook her head. "We're too different. Michael's an attorney. I run a small shop, and I already have a daughter." London smiled gently. "A happy marriage isn't built on matching backgrounds. It's built on how two people treat each other. My husband came from a respected military family. I was just a market vendor's daughter. His parents opposed our marriage from the very beginning, but we still spent 20 happy years together before he passed away. I still miss him every day." Gisela lowered her head without saying anything else. Her hands continued sealing another box, but her thoughts had wandered far away. She had never allowed herself to imagine a future like that. One evening, Michael came home earlier than usual carrying a bag of fresh fruit. He set it down inside the workshop. When he noticed the bandage wrapped around Gisela's finger, he stopped. "What happened to your hand? I wasn't paying attention. You cut yourself with the utility knife again?" "It's just a small cut. It'll heal. There's a first aid kit in the cabinet. Use it whenever you need to." After saying that, he turned and walked back toward the house. Gisela stood there watching him leave. Something stirred quietly inside her chest. She picked up another roll of packing tape and reminded herself, "Don't. You've already been through enough. Don't start imagining things again." As Gisela's business continued to grow, she needed more inventory than ever before. One afternoon, she sat at the dining table staring at her laptop. She had found a supplier offering much better wholesale prices, but the minimum order came to nearly $10,000. She didn't have that kind of money. London noticed the worry on her face. "What's wrong?" Gisela hesitated before answering. "I found a great supplier. If I can place a large order, my profit margin will be much better. But I don't have enough money." Without saying another word, London got up, walked into her bedroom, and came back carrying a savings passbook. She set it on the table in front of Gisela. "Take it." Gisela's eyes widened. "No, I can't." "Why not? That's your retirement savings. It's only money." London smiled. "Leaving it in the bank won't do anyone any good. I'd rather use it to help someone who's willing to work hard." Gisela gently pushed the passbook back toward her. "I really can't accept something this important." London didn't argue. She quietly picked it up and returned it to her room. Gisela thought the conversation was over. The following afternoon, while she was packing orders, her phone rang. It was the supplier. "Miss Gisela, we've received your payment. Your order will be shipped tomorrow." Gisela froze. "There has to be a mistake. I haven't transferred any money. The payment came through this morning." She ended the call and hurried into the house. "Miss London." London looked up from the vegetables she was chopping. "Did you pay my supplier?" "I did." "Why would you do that?" "Because I trust you to pay me back." Gisela's eyes filled with tears. "What if my business fails?" London smiled. "Then we'll figure it out together." Gisela stood there without saying a word. No one had ever trusted her like that before. She nodded firmly. "I won't let you down, I promise." That evening, Michael came home later than usual. After dinner, he sat in the living room reviewing a stack of case files while London quietly peeled oranges beside him. Without looking up, she said, "Someone came by looking for Gisela today." Michael raised his head. "Who?" "A man." She deliberately paused before adding, "He owns a hardware business in Phoenix. He said he'd been paying attention to her for a while and wanted to get to know her. Michael stopped turning the page. Really? That's what he told me. He seemed like a decent man. I told him I'd let Gisela decide for herself. Michael didn't answer. He lowered his eyes to the file again, but he hadn't read a single word. A few minutes later, he closed the folder, stood up, and said, "Mom, I'm going to check on something in the workshop." As soon as he walked away, London smiled to herself. The lights in the workshop were still on. Gisela was taping another stack of shipping boxes when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned around. "Michael? Is something wrong?" He stood there quietly for a few seconds before speaking. "Did someone come looking for you today?" Gisela looked puzzled. "Looking for me?" "A man from Phoenix." She frowned. "No, I haven't seen anyone." Michael searched her face for a moment, then let out a quiet laugh. So Mom made the whole thing up. Gisela finally understood and couldn't help smiling. "She was testing you." Michael rubbed the back of his neck with an embarrassed smile. "I guess she was." The workshop fell silent. After a long pause, he looked at her again. "Gisela, there's something I've wanted to tell you for a long time." She waited without saying anything. "I know you've been hurt. I know you're afraid to trust someone again. I kept telling myself to wait because I didn't want to pressure you. But when Mom told me another man had come looking for you," he smiled helplessly, "I realized I couldn't keep pretending it didn't matter." Gisela lowered her eyes. Her chest felt unusually tight. "Michael, you don't have to answer me today," he said softly. "I just want you to know how I feel. I don't care about your past. I don't care that you have Ara. I care about you because you're you." Gisela couldn't find the words to respond. Michael slowly stepped closer. "If one day you're willing to trust someone again, I hope you'll give me that chance." Before she could answer, he gently wrapped his arms around her. It wasn't a desperate embrace. It was careful, warm, and full of patience. After a few quiet seconds, Gisela slowly rested her forehead against his shoulder. This time, she didn't push him away. Outside, the night breeze drifted through the citrus trees. Inside the workshop, two people who had carried their burdens alone for far too long finally found someone willing to help carry them together. The morning after that hug, nothing felt awkward between them. Michael still went to work as usual, and Gisela still spent her day packing orders and hosting live streams. But whenever their eyes met, neither of them looked away as quickly as before. A few mornings later, Michael walked into the workshop carrying 2 cups of coffee. He set one beside Gisela. "You skipped breakfast again, didn't you?" Gisela smiled sheepishly. "I had too many orders to pack. Coffee isn't breakfast." He placed a paper bag on the table. "I brought you a breakfast sandwich." Gisela laughed softly. "You're starting to sound exactly like your mom." "I've heard her say it enough times." The two of them laughed together. After a moment, Michael's expression turned serious again. "About what I told you that night. I meant every word. I'm not taking any of it back." Gisela lowered her eyes. "I'm scared." "I know. I'm not afraid of getting hurt anymore. I'm afraid Ari will get hurt." Michael nodded. "Then let me earn both of your trust. I don't need an answer today. I'll wait for as long as it takes." Gisela looked at him quietly. "You're a very patient man," Michael smiled. "Because you're worth waiting for." Before Gisela could say anything else, London walked into the workshop carrying a basket of folded laundry. She glanced at the two of them and smiled knowingly. "So, have you finally said it?" Michael let out a helpless sigh. "Mom." London laughed. "If I hadn't made up that story about another man coming after Gisela, you'd probably still be pretending to be just friends." Gisela covered her mouth, trying not to laugh. "So you really planned all of that?" "Of course I did," London replied proudly. "Someone had to give my son a little push." Michael shook his head with a smile. "Mom, you're unbelievable." Gisela laughed too. "Your mom is amazing. She really set a trap for her own son." From that day on, neither of them tried to hide their feelings anymore. Michael drove Ari and Ben to preschool every morning before heading to work. Every evening, he stopped by the workshop to help Gisela pack orders before going inside for dinner. Little by little, Ari became closer to him. One afternoon, while Michael was fixing one of the storage shelves, Ari walked over carrying a cup of water with both hands. "Michael, you must be thirsty." He accepted it with a smile. "Thank you." Ari tilted her head. Ben calls you Uncle Michael. Mom calls you Michael too. What should I call you? Michael crouched down in front of her. Call me whatever makes you happy. Ari thought for a few seconds before asking quietly, Can I call you Dad? The workshop fell silent. Michael's eyes turned red. Of course you can. Ari threw her arms around his neck. Gisela quickly turned away and pretended to straighten a stack of boxes so they wouldn't notice the tears in her eyes. Not long afterward, Michael began appearing in Gisela's live streams. Sometimes he helped introduce products. Sometimes he simply carried boxes in the background. Viewers loved watching the two of them together. Their videos spread quickly online, bringing even more customers to the shop. One evening, after they had packed the last order, Michael took a small velvet box from his pocket. This isn't an engagement ring, he said with a smile. I just want everyone to know you're already with someone. That way, no one else will try to pursue you. Gisela opened the box. Inside was a simple silver ring with a small blue gemstone. She smiled, then slipped it onto the ring finger of her left hand. It fit perfectly. A few days later, it was Gisela's birthday. Michael had quietly asked Nora about the date because Gisela had never mentioned it herself. Since Ari was born, she had never celebrated her birthday. To her, it had become just another ordinary day. That evening, after finishing her live stream, Gisela walked toward the workshop, expecting to pack another batch of orders. The lights suddenly came on. Happy birthday! Ari, Ben, London, and Michael all stood there smiling. A small birthday cake sat in the middle of the table. Gisela stopped in her tracks. You remembered? London smiled warmly. A birthday only comes once a year. How could we forget? Before Gisela realized it, her eyes had filled with tears. She had long since stopped expecting anyone to remember her birthday. Michael walked over holding a bouquet of white daisies. Happy birthday, Gisela. She accepted the flowers with both hands. Thank you. Michael took a slow breath before reaching into his pocket. This time, he knelt down on one knee. In his hand was another small velvet box. Inside was a diamond ring. Gisela, neither of us has had an easy life. I can't promise there won't be difficult days ahead, but I can promise you'll never have to face them alone again. Will you marry me? Gisela covered her mouth. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Ari gently tugged at her sleeve. Mom, say yes. Ben grinned beside her. Please be my aunt. London quietly wiped the corners of her eyes. Gisela nodded through her tears. Yes. Michael slipped the ring onto her finger and stood up, pulling her into his arms. Ari and Ben clapped happily beside them while London smiled with tears in her eyes. That evening, Michael fired up the backyard grill while London brought out plates of food to the patio. The smell of grilled steaks, barbecue chicken, corn on the cob, and roasted vegetables filled the warm Arizona air. Ari and Ben ran around the backyard laughing until Michael called everyone to the table. The five of them gathered outside for a simple family barbecue, sharing good food, easy conversation, and the quiet happiness of finally feeling like a real family. A few months later, Gisela and Michael held a simple wedding in the backyard of their home. There were no extravagant decorations or hundreds of guests, just family members and a few close friends who had stood by them through the hardest times. Antonio arrived early that morning wearing the nicest shirt he owned. He stood in front of Gisela for a long time before finally speaking. You chose the right man this time. It wasn't much, but it was the closest he had ever come to apologizing for the day he had turned his daughter away. Gisela smiled and hugged him. Thank you, Dad. Antonio gently patted her shoulder without saying anything else. Nora stood nearby, quietly wiping away her tears. During the ceremony, Ari and Ben walked in together, scattering flower petals across the yard. Their laughter made everyone smile. When it was time to exchange vows, Michael held Gisela's hands and looked into her eyes. From now on, you won't have to face anything alone. Gisela smiled through her tears. Neither will you. After the ceremony, everyone gathered around a long table in the backyard for a home-cooked meal. There were no expensive dishes, but the yard was filled with laughter. After the wedding, Gisela and Ari officially moved from the workshop into the main house. The workshop behind the house became a dedicated space for live streaming, packing orders, and storing inventory. As business continued to grow, Gisela hired 2 employees to help with shipping and customer service. Before long, her monthly income had grown beyond Michael's salary as an attorney. While Gisela had built a new life filled with stability and happiness on the other side of town, Aiden sat alone at a run-down roadside bar beneath a large shade tree. His clothes were wrinkled, and his faded t-shirt was stained with spilled beer. In front of him sat a bottle of cheap whiskey and a small plate of boiled peanuts. He tipped back another shot, swallowed the burning liquor, set the glass down, and took a long drag from his cigarette. Around him sat a few other men, each wearing the same defeated expression. After losing his job, Aiden couldn't find another one. The business community in Yuma wasn't very large, but it was large enough for people to know exactly what kind of man he was. No company was willing to hire him. He tried driving for a rideshare service for 2 months before quitting because he couldn't stand taking orders from dispatchers young enough to be his juniors. He tried opening a small neighborhood bar, but it failed and left him buried in debt. In the end, he drifted into gambling. It started with small card games, then bigger poker tables, and eventually sports betting. Aiden had always been clever. At first, he won several times, and the victories made him believe he had figured the system out. But gambling only lets people win long enough to pull them deeper. The farther he went, the more he lost. Within 6 months, every dollar he had saved was gone. A year later, he had no choice but to use his house as collateral. The house where his wife and daughter had once lived became security for his debts. When he couldn't repay the loan, 3 heavily tattooed debt collectors showed up at his front door. Aiden ran before they could catch him. He drifted from one town to another, renting tiny rundown rooms and unloading freight at produce warehouses through the night. Tonight, he returned to Yuma. He walked past the street where his old house stood. It belonged to someone else now. The new owners had painted it green and hung decorative lanterns by the front door. Aiden stood there for a long time. That house had once been the place where a woman waited every evening with a hot meal. A little girl used to run to the gate every time he came home. He had once possessed everything, and he had thrown it all away with his own hands. He had heard that Gisela had remarried an attorney and now operated a large warehouse on the outskirts of town. He didn't dare disturb her. He had nothing left. He was a broken man, hiding from creditors who searched for him every day. Most nights, dinner was nothing more than instant ramen made with tap water. When greed drags a person into the mud, sooner or later that person sinks beneath it. Late that night, Aiden returned to his rundown apartment. The room held nothing more than a narrow wooden bed and an old standing fan that only worked on its lowest setting. He lay down, reached into his backpack, and pulled out a faded photograph. It had been taken shortly after Ari was born. Gisela was sitting on the bed, cradling their newborn daughter in her arms and smiling at the camera. Back then, her smile was gentle and untouched by exhaustion. Aiden closed his eyes. The tears of a 40-year-old man were not bitter, but they carried a pain unlike anything he had ever known. Yuma remained as lively as it had always been. Life went on without waiting for anyone. The paths of 2 people who had once been husband and wife had now gone in completely different directions. On one side was the warm glow of a home, a backyard filled with citrus trees, 2 children laughing as they played, and a silver-haired woman sitting outside in the evening, preparing food for the family. On the other side was a dark, silent room where a lonely man lay beneath an old fan with no one waiting for him, no one bringing him dinner, and no one left to care whether he came home at all. In the end, every choice comes with a price. No one can escape paying it. A failed marriage doesn't always lead to a dark ending, especially for a woman as resilient as Gisela. It took her years of hardship, endless effort, and countless tears before she finally understood that. Loving and marrying the wrong man is a heartbreak many women know all too well. They can either spend a lifetime enduring disrespect and unhappiness, or find the courage to walk away and build a better future for themselves. The road is harder, but it can also lead to real happiness. Aiden's ending doesn't represent every unfaithful or selfish husband, but it does serve as a reminder to anyone who fails to appreciate the people who stand beside them. Sometimes, the greatest loss isn't what life takes from you. It's what you throw away with your own hands. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to share it with your friends, and follow the channel for more unforgettable stories.